So my name is Maya Holcomb. I'm the East Central Ambassador for the Wisconsin Bike Fed, and today we're going to be learning about Savvy City Cycling. I work for a campaign called Share and Be Aware, and we're sponsored by the Wisconsin DOT. We attend over 100 events each year. We affect 55,000 people annually. We have hundreds of thousands of media impressions. So we're going to start off by talking about why bike, the gear you'll need, and planning your route, and then we'll talk about the rules of the road, more of an overview. So, why bike? It's really more like why not. You can bike to work, to school, or just for exercise. This is about mostly commuting though. So biking is good for your health, for the world, and for our future. For example, you can lose up to 13 pounds in the first year of commuting. And just 3 hours of bicycling per week can reduce your risk of heart attack or stroke by 50%, and a 160-pound cyclist burns 800 calories while pedaling 14 miles an hour. 14 miles an hour really isn't that fast. It's a really good speed for commuting, especially on open roads. So it's pretty easy to achieve that. Now, short trips by bike. So when traveling 3 miles or less in urban areas, it's often quicker to travel by bike than your car. Not only is it quicker, but you'll save on gas, you'll get fresh air, you'll reduce your impact on the carbon footprint, and most of the time you get the closest parking spot in the bike rack. So, gearing up. Taking a trip to your local bike shop can help you get the correct gear that you'll need. There's a few questions to ask yourself before buying a bike or any of the gear. The number one priority that you have to think about is how long is your ride. Any bike usually, doesn't have to be any special bike, can be used for a ride under 3 miles. Anything greater than that, you should think about the following questions: the surfaces, what you need to carry, your experience, and what you need to enjoy the ride. So there's basically 3 different types of bike you can use. You can use a road bike, a mountain bike, or a hybrid bike. A road bike is a little more efficient for the road, like flat pavement, where a mountain bike might fare better on gravel, and a hybrid kind of is in between those. So you should think about which surface. If you're just riding on pavement, a road bike might be best, but if you're also riding on gravel trails, you should consider getting a hybrid or a mountain bike. Things that you might need to carry, the stuff that you need to bring around, is another thing to consider. If you're just carrying a few things, a small backpack or side bag might work, but if you have multiple things like outfits, other hats, other shoes, you might look into getting panniers, which are side bags, and there's a picture of that in a little bit. Your experience level as well. You might not want to get a road bike right away just because the tires are narrower, so you might want to look to a hybrid bike. And different accessories, such as the most important accessory, which is a helmet. It's the most important accessory that you need while on the bike because it keeps you safe. You can get gloves, glasses to protect your eyes, and special shoes that make it more comfortable. So commuter bikes do exist. This is a special bike used simply for commuting. There's a few things that might be noticeable to decide that it is a commuter bike. The first thing are the panniers. These are side bags used to put things in. Right here on the back wheel you see a fender that goes all the way up here. That protects your back and your clothes from getting wet or dirty from a wet road perhaps. There's also a chain guard around the chain ring that protects your legs or pants from getting caught in the chain. And then there's also a front rack for holding things. Those are the basics of a commuter bike. They really make the ride to work or school easier. So to ensure a smooth ride, there are a few things to consider. The first things are lights and reflectors. In Wisconsin, lights and reflectors are required at night. The first requirement is a front light, which has to be white and visible up to 500 feet away, and on the back you're required to have a red reflector visible from 50 feet away. Something that's optional but highly recommended is having a flashing red light on the back that gets drivers' attention very well. Racks and panniers, like I said before, are another great thing to make a comfortable ride. You can see that he's using panniers as well here. He also seems to be wearing a backpack. Panniers help with the center of gravity, where backpacks kind of change your center of gravity and make it more difficult to stop and slow down. Clothing and toiletries are another thing to consider. Especially if you're riding to work, you want to show up to work in a presentable fashion, not all sweaty and dirty. So by shoving toiletries like deodorant and soaps in your pannier, it's easy to clean up at work before the job starts. The other thing that you need to do before your rides is an ABC Quick Check. Does anybody know what an ABC Quick Check is? An ABC Quick Check, the A is for air, or air pressure, the B is for brakes, and the chain is for, or the C is for your chain, and the quick check is to make sure you check your quick release levers. All these things will hopefully prevent any problems while on your ride, and you'll be able to diagnose problems before you have to go to work. So planning your route. Planning your route can be sometimes difficult because if you just look it up on Google Maps, it's going to give you the fastest way, which could often involve a highway that you don't want to ride on. So lately, Google Maps have just introduced a thing called Google Maps by Bike. It's kind of like Google Maps by foot, but it's for your bike. And they'll show you bike lanes and other safe bike routes. You could also use bicycle commuter maps. I know that the Sheboygan Bicycle Company offers those for Sheboygan County, as well as in Plymouth at the Backdoor Bike Shop. You can also ask other cyclists who bike often which roads are safe to ride on. We tend to know a lot more than we look like we do. You can always ride with a bike buddy. They'll be able to say, well, that road doesn't look that safe, so you could take another route. Another smart thing to do is, especially if you're traveling to work or school and you need to be there on time, is to try your ride on a Saturday and give yourself a lot of time to be comfortable with your route and how many cars are on that route. So you should always also enjoy your ride. Common factors between bikes and cars are that they're both supposed to follow the rules, they both are vehicles, and they both do cause danger to other people. So because bikers aren't protected by a steel cage of a car can hit them. But something else to consider while you're biking is that as a vehicle, you still must stop for pedestrians. I have seen people walking get hit by bikers, and it's not something pretty. So always look out for your fellow pedestrians out there. The differences between a car and a bike are that bikes are a narrower vehicle. They're not as wide as cars, obviously. They're slower, and they're more vulnerable just because we have less protection around us. So we're going to go over the rules of the road. Cyclists fare best when they act and are treated as drivers of vehicles, like is stated in state law. So the rules of the road are basically to ride in the road and not on the sidewalk. You have to obey all signs and signals. You have to ride in the same direction as traffic and use the rightmost lane going in your direction. Something I like to think about is with signs and signals is signs don't change and signals do. So if a sign doesn't change, you have to follow that sign at all times. If you come up to a stop sign, you have to do a complete stop and put your foot down. Whereas a signal, which maybe it's a red light, but you see that it's about to change green, it might be smart and efficient just to coast in, and hopefully it'll change green before you actually have to fully stop. So it's always important to ride as far as the right as practical. Sometimes it isn't practical, especially when oftentimes cars park on the right side of the road. There might be garbage cans, police officers, or other law enforcement vehicles. So you have to ride about 3 to 3.5 feet from the nearest curb or parked car. So as you can tell, this is quite a family using the entire bike lane as they can. You can see the daughter here might be a little close to the edge just because she looks probably about 1.5 feet from the curb. She should be a little further away just in case there were some debris in the road. Now the man in the back, you can see, is kind of doing protection, kind of in the back, making sure that it's visible. They're all wearing helmets. Again, you can see the panniers on the woman's bike there. So you can tell they're probably going somewhere to do something. They're commuting. So like I said, you should always use the rightmost lane going to your destination. But you should also avoid the door zone. The door zone is right next to parked cars. Being doored, as some cyclists like to call it, is when you're driving right next to a car and they fling the door open on you and you just run into it. So to avoid this, You can safely ride 3 to 5 feet from the parked car. That is legal and for your safety. So you have to know how to take the lane. If you're riding and you're going straight down the road but you need to turn soon or a turn is coming up, you need to take the lane. Taking the lane does not involve being vulnerable and staying to the side. You need to make a solid move and get out into the lane and make sure everybody around you knows that you're going to ride there. So that involves not riding 3.5 feet to the curb. It means riding in the middle and being confident being there. So do not ride on the sidewalk. A lot of city rules or town rules say that you shouldn't ride on the sidewalk, but that differs between cities. Usually it's acceptable for children to ride on sidewalks just because they're not as experienced on bikes, but adults should be able to ride on the street. Riding on sidewalks makes you almost more vulnerable because you're not visible to drivers. They're not looking at the sidewalk, they're looking at the road. So if you plan to jut out into traffic or be in traffic at some point, you should just start in traffic and stay there instead of transferring from the sidewalk to the road. As mentioned before, you should always yield to pedestrians and crosswalks. A biker is a vehicle according to state law, so you have to yield just like a driver does. Okay, so turning signals. You should always look over your shoulder before changing the lane position, just like you do in your car. You can use your hand and arm signals to indicate your intention to stop or turn. So, like it shows here, a left turn can be shown like this, and a right turn can be shown like this. Stopping can be shown with your hand down. This signal can also mean right, but it can either be this or this. There's no rule saying which one it has to be, so whichever one you're feeling comfortable with. The other thing is, because as cyclists we need both of our hands to steer in case of debris being in the road, there's no general requirement or rule as to how long you need to hold your signal, just as long as it's done within 50 yards or 50 feet of your turn. Okay, so turning left. If you're turning left, first of all, when you're a little further away from the stop sign, you need to look over your shoulder, your left shoulder, to check if there's any cars back there. Then you should signal for maybe 2 seconds, put your hands back on the wheel, and start taking the lane. You can see here that they signal about halfway there and they start sweeping over. That will show other drivers that that's where you're going and that's where you're turning. Then you should make a complete stop, put your feet down, look all ways, including behind you, and making your left-hand turn signal, and continue on to your turn. If you're not comfortable with turning like a normal vehicle at an intersection, you can do a block turn. This is sometimes handy at really busy intersections where not everybody is comfortable. So first, you'll just signal that you're going to go straight. You don't really even have to signal, but just stay on the right side, stop and look, go straight past the other cars if they were over here, and put yourself in the far right-hand part of that lane over there. And again, stop and look. This just makes it easier. Sometimes people are uncomfortable making long turns in intersections with other vehicles. Traffic circles are pretty simple. You just have to go about it like you would go as a vehicle. Come into the intersection slowly, look around you, see who's coming and from where, and continue through. Remember, you only need to signal when you're going out of the intersection, and you should only be making a right-hand turn out of that. So that one's just simply looking. You don't really have to take a lane for that. Okay, so you need to use a white front headlight and a red rear reflector or light at night. The white front headlight and the rear reflector are requirements by state law, but a rear flashing light is always nice. But remember, if you want a light on the back of your bike, it has to be red. It cannot be white. That is also illegal. It has to be red. So weather. Here in Wisconsin, we have some crazy weather, usually just rain and snow. You can just wear regular rain clothes, like a raincoat. You should definitely wear extra shoes if you're riding in the rain because your feet are going to get wet. A helmet, you can get a helmet hat to go underneath it to protect your head from the weather. But the other thing is just deciding when and where you need to ride. So locking your bike. You should definitely always lock your bike wherever you go. Even if you're comfortable with it, it might just be a good safety precaution. Here you can see that the bike is locked around the frame and the post, and sometimes if your lock reaches that, you can lock your wheel in with it, especially if the thief really wants your wheels. They can just take your wheels off if you're only attached to the frame. So it's important to lock as many components of the bicycle together to a safe spot as you can. That'll protect your bike. Okay, so we at the Wisconsin Bike Fed did the Wisconsin Bike Challenge. And for our challenge, we biked over 2 million miles, burned over 51 million calories, conserved over 900,000 pounds of carbon dioxide, and saved over $300,000. So this is all from just commuting, biking to school and work, and clearly you can make quite the difference. So again, that's just where the Wisconsin Bike Fed. Let's have some fun and go do some bike drills. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about is the ABC quick check, like I mentioned before. Again, A stands for what?
Air.
Air pressure. So feel your tires, make sure they're not soft. And if they are, I have my handy dandy tire pump here. And then B is for brakes. So you should always check your brakes, make sure that if you spin your wheel, it's going to stop. And the front too as well. I guess I can't really do that. Stops. Good. And then C, your chain, you're going to make sure there's no rust. If there is, it's time to clean it and give it a little grease. If you feel it and there's grease on it, you're good. You're golden. The other thing is your quick check. So you should check your quick releases. Make sure those are tight on your front and back. They're pretty tight. You don't want your wheels coming off when you're riding. So let's do some short drills over here. And start by just riding in a big circle to practice our turning techniques. We'll just follow the leader. Always have your inside knee up when you're turning. Continuously look over your shoulder just like you were riding on the road. Now we're going to do a little smaller of a circle. So in these handicap parking spots, I want you to take the handicap parking spot and the shaded region next to it and use that to make a circle within it. And see how tight you can make a circle. So by using this area, and the area next to it, just make a circle. And if you can even try to just stay in the parking spot. It's a little more difficult. This requires some braking. Good job. What we could probably do is ride around and make sure that we're signaling within the parking lot, first of all, and then we can probably ride just around the sidewalk. So if you're riding straight here, look over your shoulder, signal, and make your turn. Again, look over your shoulder, make your signal, and follow up with the turn. Over your shoulder, make the signal, and follow up with your turn. Now keep doing that. I'm going to see all of you with your turn. And then when you come back over here, make your stopping signal and do a safe stop. Good job. So I know most races are going as fast as you can. My favorite race is riding as slow as you possibly can. So by doing a track stand, braking, or keeping your balance, you can ride very slowly, like this, you just go super slow. And whoever can get to the porta potty last wins by going in a straight line. So you might have an advantage.
while riding is to use your knees and your shoulders and your elbows to keep your balance. It's not always about what's on your bike, but especially when you're turning, using your knees and your body to turn are very safe and effective because you don't have to brake as much. I'm going to look over my shoulder, make my signal, hold my balance, take the lead, and make my turn. So how about you guys give that a try? Don't forget to wave at the camera, guys. Drive fast.